Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about a young woman who lost everything people thought mattered, yet gained something far more powerful. At just 25 years old, she became a widow overnight. Left behind were 1,700 acres of farmland, mountains of debt, failing equipment, and a community that had already decided she would fail. What happened next shocked everyone who doubted her. When Emily Carter stood at the edge of her property on a cold autumn morning, she could barely believe her life had changed so dramatically. Just 3 months earlier, she and her husband Daniel had been making plans for the future. They dreamed of expanding their farm, improving their equipment, and eventually raising a family. Then tragedy struck. Daniel was involved in a highway accident while transporting grain to a processing facility. The accident claimed his life instantly. One moment Emily was a happy young wife. The next, she was standing alone at a funeral surrounded by neighbors offering condolences mixed with concern. The concern quickly turned into whispers. She's too young. She doesn't know enough about farming. She'll sell the land within a year. Someone should buy that farm before it falls apart. Emily heard every word. She tried to ignore them, but it was impossible. The truth was that some of those comments reflected her own fears. Daniel had handled most of the machinery operations. He negotiated contracts. He maintained relationships with suppliers. While Emily worked beside him every day, she often let him take the lead. Now every responsibility belonged to her. The farm covered 1,700 acres. The combine harvester was nearly 20 years old. 2 tractors required major repairs. The irrigation system was unreliable. Fuel prices were rising. Crop prices were unpredictable. And there were loans. A lot of loans. As she sat at the kitchen table reviewing financial documents, her stomach twisted. The numbers were terrifying. The farm wasn't profitable. It was surviving month to month. One poor season could destroy everything. Friends suggested selling. Relatives suggested leasing the land. Even the local banker hinted that finding a buyer might be the smartest option. But every time Emily looked out the window at the fields Daniel loved, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. This farm wasn't just property. It was a legacy. Daniel's grandfather had started it with barely 40 acres. His father expanded it. Daniel spent his entire life building it. Emily refused to be the one who lost it. The next morning she made a decision. She would fight. Even if she failed, she would fail trying. The first challenge came immediately. Harvest season was approaching, and the old combine broke down again. Money she didn't have. Several neighboring farmers shook their heads. One even laughed. You can't run a farm that size with equipment like that. Emily smiled politely. Inside, she was terrified. That night she spent hours watching repair videos online. She studied manuals. She called mechanics. Then she walked into the machine shed and started working. For 3 straight days she barely slept. Grease covered her hands. Cuts marked her fingers. Her back ached constantly. But on the 4th day, the combine started. The engine roared to life. Emily stood there staring in disbelief. She had fixed it. Not perfectly. Not permanently. But enough to keep moving. That small victory changed something inside her. For the first time since Daniel's death, she felt capable. Maybe she couldn't control everything, but she could learn. And if she could learn, she could adapt. That winter she turned education into an obsession. While others watched television at night, Emily studied agriculture. She attended workshops. She read research papers. She listened to farming podcasts. She learned about precision agriculture, soil analysis, crop rotation, and modern farm management. Many experts recommended technologies that seemed expensive. But Emily discovered something important. Some improvements saved money almost immediately. She started with soil testing. The results surprised her. Large sections of the farm were receiving fertilizer they didn't actually need. For years, fertilizer had been applied evenly across fields. The practice was common. But the data showed significant waste. Emily adjusted application rates. The following season she reduced fertilizer costs dramatically. People noticed. The local supplier asked what changed. Emily simply smiled. She wasn't ready to reveal her strategy. Then she tackled irrigation. Rather than replacing the entire system, she repaired critical sections herself and upgraded only where necessary. The improvements increased efficiency and reduced water consumption. Again, expenses dropped. Again, neighbors were surprised. But the biggest challenge arrived during spring planting. Heavy rain delayed operations. Fields became muddy. Equipment got stuck. Schedules fell apart. Every day brought new problems. Some evenings Emily returned home exhausted and frustrated. More than once she cried alone in the kitchen. There were moments when selling seemed easier. Moments when the pressure felt unbearable. Moments when she missed Daniel so much it physically hurt. Yet every morning she got up again. One step. One field. One task at a time. Then came an unexpected opportunity. A regional agricultural conference offered a competition for innovative farm management ideas. The prize included funding and consulting support. Emily almost didn't enter. After all, she was still learning. What chance did she have against experienced professionals? But she submitted her plan anyway. Her proposal focused on combining traditional farming practices with affordable technology solutions. Weeks later she received a phone call. She had made the final round. The presentation took place in front of industry leaders, investors, and agricultural experts. Emily was nervous. She nearly backed out. But when she stepped onto the stage, she remembered Daniel. She remembered every person who said she couldn't do this. She answered difficult questions. When the event ended, she felt proud regardless of the outcome. Then the judges announced the winner. Emily Carter. The room erupted into applause. For a moment she couldn't move. She couldn't believe it. The funding allowed her to modernize key equipment and implement additional improvements. More importantly, it brought attention. Agricultural magazines featured her story. Farm organizations invited her to speak. People who once doubted her now wanted advice. Yet success brought new challenges. The following year a severe drought hit the region. Many farms struggled. Yields declined dramatically. Some operations experienced devastating losses. Emily's farm suffered too. But her irrigation upgrades and soil management practices helped minimize damage. While others lost significant portions of their crops, her farm remained surprisingly resilient. The difference wasn't luck. It was preparation. Word spread quickly. Farmers who once dismissed her began visiting the property. They took notes. They wanted to understand how she achieved such results. Emily welcomed them. She remembered what it felt like to need guidance. Instead of holding grudges, she shared what she learned. That attitude earned respect. Years passed. The farm continued improving. Debt decreased. Profitability increased. Equipment became more reliable. Operations expanded. Emily hired workers. She invested in new technology. She diversified crops. Each success built upon the last. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came during a county agricultural banquet. Hundreds of people attended. Farmers, business owners, community leaders, and industry professionals filled the hall. Toward the end of the evening, an award was announced. Agricultural Innovator of the Year. The winner was Emily. As she walked to the stage, she noticed familiar faces. Some were people who had encouraged her. Others were people who had doubted her. A few were the same individuals who once predicted her failure. Emily accepted the award and looked across the crowd. Then she spoke. I didn't win because I knew all the answers. The room became silent. I won because I kept learning when I didn't know them. People nodded. Some smiled. Others lowered their eyes. Emily continued. When my husband passed away, many people assumed this farm's story was ending. The truth is, it was only beginning. Success doesn't belong exclusively to those with experience. It belongs to those willing to keep going when things become difficult. The audience erupted into applause. Several people stood. Then more followed. Soon the entire room was on its feet. Emily felt tears forming. Not because of the award. Not because of recognition. But because she realized how far she had come. The scared 25-year-old widow sitting alone at a kitchen table reviewing debt statements would never have imagined this moment. After the banquet, an older farmer approached her. Years earlier he had been among her loudest critics. He removed his hat and looked embarrassed. I owe you an apology. Emily smiled gently. You don't owe me anything. No, he replied. I do. I thought you'd fail. I was wrong. Emily nodded. We've all been wrong about something. The man laughed. Maybe. But not usually this wrong. That conversation stayed with her. Not because she needed validation, but because it reminded her of an important truth. People often judge potential based on appearances. They see youth and assume weakness. They see grief and assume defeat. They see obstacles and assume failure. What they don't see is determination. They don't see resilience. They don't see what happens when someone refuses to quit. 10 years after Daniel's death, Emily stood once again at the edge of the property. The farm looked different now. Modern equipment moved efficiently across fields. Healthy crops stretched toward the horizon. New storage facilities stood where aging structures once struggled. Employees worked confidently. The operation was thriving. Financially stable. respected, innovative. Yet some things remained unchanged. The sunrise still painted the fields gold. The wind still moved through the crops. The land still carried the legacy of generations. Emily closed her eyes and imagined Daniel beside her. She wished he could see everything. The growth, the success, the future. Though he wasn't physically there, she knew his influence remained everywhere. In every field, every improvement, every decision, every victory. A young employee approached with questions about planting schedules. Emily smiled and joined the discussion. There was always more work to do. Always another challenge waiting. But she welcomed it. Because challenges no longer represented threats. They represented opportunities. Opportunities to learn, to improve, to grow. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of her journey. Success isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about moving through hardship. It's about taking the next step when the road disappears. It's about believing in possibilities others cannot see. The world had expected a young widow to surrender. Instead, she transformed a struggling operation into one of the region's most respected farms. She inherited failing equipment, crushing debt, and widespread doubt. But she also inherited responsibility, purpose, and the chance to prove what determination can accomplish. In the end, the 1,700 acres became more than farmland. They became evidence. Evidence that resilience can overcome tragedy. Evidence that learning can overcome inexperience. Evidence that courage can overcome fear. And evidence that sometimes the people everyone doubts become the very people who change the story. So if you are facing a challenge right now, if people are questioning your abilities, if circumstances seem impossible, remember Emily's story. Remember the young widow standing alone against overwhelming odds. Remember the broken equipment, the debt, the criticism, the setbacks. And remember what happened next. She kept going. One day at a time. One problem at a time. One victory at a time. Until eventually, the same people who doubted her were applauding her success. Because the difference between failure and triumph is often much smaller than people realize. Sometimes it's simply the decision to continue. And that decision changed everything. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that persistence matters. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.